So let's talk a little bit about what I intended, what happened, and how I want to improve it. The original intent was that there were going to be two effects overall. One was the boost at the top, which was going to be adjustable, so I could change it in height. And the second was going to be these jets that ring the tree were going to be able to have a second solenoid that controlled them and allowed them to change height. And the premise was that as I opened the solenoid for these jets, they would change height dramatically. So I kind of make them dance. It's going to be really great. However, because of the way I designed it, it didn't work the way I wanted. So I want to talk about how I troubleshoot that and how to fix it. Let's talk about the jets first. The jets are fed at the top by a needle valve and at the bottom by a solenoid. Okay? The solenoid opens up to the full pressure from the regulator. The needle valve allows me to change the feed to these jets. And I can change the height of the jets very effectively with the needle valve overall. I can raise or lower them. A needle valve doesn't change pressure, it changes flow. The problem here is that when I open up the valve, the solenoid valve at the other end of this ring from the needle valve, I don't get enough of a pressure differential fast enough to make the effect bounce. And I'd have to increase the regulator pressure a lot, so I had a big differential between the flow of the needle valve at the top and the open flow of the solenoid at the bottom. And I don't really want to run a terribly high pressure for this for a variety of reasons. One, more pressure in the system is something you have to be more cautious of. Two, it makes it possible, if you're not careful, to use up a lot more propane on a regular basis. And three, I'd like to be able to use one of my cheaper regulators instead of my high pressure regulator. I'm running right now at about 10 psi, and that's where I'd like to keep it. So to fix the jets, what I'm going to do is cap the end. So I've got the needle valve at the top controlling how high they are overall. I'm just going to leave them as they are. And I'm going to take the solenoid at the bottom, and I'm going to plumb it through a cross, that is 1 in, 3 out. And out of each of those 3 outs, I'm going to run a little copper line up through, punch a hole right here, and bring it up so that this center jet on the bottom ring serves as this pilot. That way I'll have the boost at the top, and when I press the other solenoid, I'll have 3 combined booshes at the bottom shooting up. So the tree will go boosh, 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 and I'll still get a kind of a dancing effect. I hope. To fix the problem at the top with the boosh up here, which I was supposed to be able to adjust with the needle valve and thereby change the height fairly easily, the problem is that the needle valve's at the bottom and the solenoid's at the top, and the plumbing in between serves as an accumulator. So if I change that needle valve and hit the boosh, I've still got all the pressure built up in between, because the needle valve doesn't change pressure, it only changes flow. If it's only flowing a little bit, but you leave it for a long time, it builds back up the full pressure. I want to have a quicker adjustment for how big that boosh is. So I'm going to take that needle valve out altogether, and I'm going to move the solenoid from the top to the bottom. That way I'll control the volume of vapor coming out of that boosh by the overall regulator pressure. And I'll control it combined with the regulator pressure that's driving the booshes at the bottom. So it'll be 1 needle valve controlling the height of the flames, and then 2 solenoids, one for the bottom boosh, one for the top boosh. And then the bottom one will just have an open tube going all the way up, so it'll just vent itself every time. So the parts I bought to make the fixes I want are these. First, there's a cross. This is a 1/4 inch cross that allows 1 in, 3 out, or however you want to use it as a manifold between those. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drive directly from a solenoid, 1/4 inch solenoid, into it, and then outward from it. And outward from it, on each one of those outward bounds, I'm going to put a 1/4 inch to 3/8 inch male flare adapter. But each of them will be like this. And then I bought some 3/8 inch outer diameter refrigerator tubing that I'll flare with flare fittings. I'll run just enough of the section. I'll break it in 3 even sections, and I'll run it up through here, so it's pointing here, and I'll just crimp the end, and that'll be my jet. And I'll either run it straight through here, or I might cut a hole here. I'm going to see how that goes. But once I attach that, that'll be my new manifold. Solenoid in and 3-way out, so that it's from the cross out to each of these sides of the jet. Just as a design note, I thought you might like to see the back of the effect. I conceived the effect of having 4 sides because it was split into 4 by the way I used the rebar as the frame. And I put the decorative stuff on the 3 front sides and decided to make this the back side for a couple of reasons. One, it saved a lot of material because I didn't have to do all of the jet cutting and decoration on the back side. And 2, it just dealt with the fact that I had these couplers here that were connecting the rings together. A lot of times it's really helpful when you're building a flame effect to decide that you've got a out-of-sight back side. And that way you can hide a lot of your plumbing, control, or other things. Sometimes your effect is going to be 360 and you can't do that. But if you can, consider it. It's really worthwhile in being able to save some material or deal with some of the other things that might be more difficult for some other people to see.
In diagram form, this shows how a needle valve fed the top of the jets and a solenoid fed the bottom in the original plan. There was also a solenoid that led up towards the star for the top bush. So what I ended up doing was putting a needle valve up at the top of the star solenoid bush, and then I capped the jets at the bottom, so they're still fed by the needle valve, but they're not fed by the solenoid. The solenoid instead feeds 3 lines of copper tubing that end up working as bushes in and of themselves at the bottom of the tree. For each of the 3 bushes at the bottom of the tree, I cut the length of copper tubing, flared it, and put a female flare fitting. I then attached, after I had 3 of those, 2 adapters to the cross so that I had a 3-way bush.
Alright, so I made the changes we talked about earlier. Here's what the new bottom ones do. It doesn't exactly dance, but it does get it a lot brighter and more exciting. And the top one is now controllable. I can make it a small bush or a big bush because I added a needle valve up top. So no matter how much pressure is stored in the line below it, I can still control the size of what comes out the top. I hope you like learning a little bit about how to tune and adjust flame effects.